I've got an update for all of you on the server situation in New World. So I previously made a video about queue times and stuff, and how a server, there's one or run, and there's an EU one, I forget what its name was, that had to close from the server transfers because they got so full that they had really long queue times. Now I was told 9 hours, but I think that was incorrect. What I've seen since is on the weekends, it looks like 3 to 6 hour queue times at peak hours being 9 p.m. and 10 p.m. If you're trying to log on at like 7 p.m., the queues are like an hour, maybe 2 hours. So that's kind of the situation with the queue times. But, you know, it turns out there's a much bigger problem than the queue times. I don't know if it's ever been known before, or if this is a new issue, or if this was an issue on high pop servers in the past and just the word never really got out all that much. I had never heard of it till now. But apparently there's actually some serious issues when playing New World on a full server that are kind of crazy. So OPR, you know how you think, oh, I can't play OPR, I'll go to a full server and then I can get OPRs, right? Well, not so fast. So it turns out, at least right now, I don't know if this is always this way or what, but it turns out that only 3 OPR matches can exist at the same time. So when you have too many people trying to queue OPR, then you can't get an OPR for the opposite reason. So what happens is, if there's enough people queuing, you'll see things where the queue will say 300/40, and you'll have to wait for other OPR matches to end before you can get in. And so the opposite queue situation where it's crazy, okay? So during peak hours, you'll see queues as high as 300/40, and like if it's like midnight or if it's like, you know, noon or something, then you'll either have a somewhat quick queue or you'll be like 60/40 or something like that. I actually got a screenshot of someone who was trying to queue at, I think it was 12:30 p.m. 12:30 a.m. 12:30 a.m. And I popped up, you see at the top right, there is 104/40. This was not peak hours. This was, I think there were 1,500 people online at the time or something like that. It wasn't even at a time when there were queues. And they had to wait, 20, 30 minutes to get in at that kind of hour. But if you want to play during peak hours when there's actually a full server, then we're talking like an hour and a half, 2.5 hours to get into OPR because of the queues, which is hilarious, but also sucks. But it doesn't end there. I also found out, I would have never known this if it weren't for this. Someone I know transferred to a different one called Castle of Steel, which is about to be the next full server for US East. And apparently you have the same problem with dungeons. So he was like, he went to go do a mutator at whatever it was, Lazarus, Shipyard, whatever it was, I can't remember. And he said, he was like, wow, there's like 100 people out here. This is crazy. And then he went to queue up with it, queue for it with some people. And there was a queue for the dungeon. And he had to wait, I think it was 8 minutes. And he wasn't in a full server. When he had that wait, he only had, I think, 1,300 people online, not the full 2,000. So if you're on a server at peak time when there's 2,000 for one of those servers, and you all go for the same mutator, you may have to wait for half an hour to an hour to get into the mutator dungeon, because apparently there can only be so many mutator dungeons running at the same time. So this whole thing has just shed some light on some hilarious server situations that we didn't even know existed. Like, I don't know, maybe people knew they existed, but I'd never heard of them personally. I'd never heard of these issues from full servers. This is all new to me. I don't know if it's a temporary thing or something that got introduced recently, or if it's always been this way, and is it fixable? When will they fix it? I don't know the situation, but the irony is ridiculous. So you go, you run from a low pop server to a high one, you escape it thinking, now I can play OPR, and then you get in there and you can't play OPR. Now, provided if you're one of those people who you're on at 8 in the morning, or you're on at right around noon or something, or you're on at 4 in the morning, 2 in the morning, if you're one of those scheduled people, then yeah, you'll be fine though, because it'll just be somewhat normal. But if you're one of those people where you get home from work and you've got 4 hours to play, you get home at 5 p.m., you've got until 9, and that's if you completely ignore your like wife and kids or something. And then you play during that time, and during that whole time you'll get one OPR game because you had to wait for 2 hours. It's so wild. Like, I just never knew these were issues. It's actually crazy that all of this is shedding light onto this situation. As for server merges and more server transfers, I have read some stuff on the forums from devs replying to other people and stuff, and the way they make it sound is, at this time, they have absolutely no plans of a third server transfer token or additional server merges. And they're like, but if we do have announcements, we'll let you know in the news section, yada, yada, yada. But they said, at this time, there's no plans. So there's not some plan like, oh yeah, next week they're going to take all those leftover 100 pop servers and merge them. Based on what they said, I mean, it may be 2 weeks, 4 weeks, 16 weeks, I don't know. It's not going to be a week, though, based on what they said, unless they were just, just saying that haphazardly and not, really thinking about the meaning and whatever of what they were saying. So, if you transfer to these servers, you're going to be stuck in this situation. Now, again, on the weekdays, if you're one of the people who have time to play on weekdays, it's not going to be as bad. The peak hours are not anything like the weekend. So even at 9 p.m., there might be a queue, but it's going to be a short queue. So weekdays, those servers, they're good, sort of. Although, if you're at 1,900 concurrent players, even on a weekday, you'll probably have those crazy queues. Now, here's where it's going to get weird, okay? Brings us all to one central point here. There's a patch that's going to drop either tonight or tomorrow night, probably. The February release. And with it, OPR is now going to give Umbral Shards on wins and losses. With that change, you are going to see so many more people queuing for OPR than you ever have. So if you are on a server that already has these overstacked queues for OPR, it is going to get significantly worse once this patch comes out. So like during peak, when there's 2,000 people online, if it's 300 of 40, after this patch, it's probably going to be 500 of 40. If at, say, 4 p.m., it's 100 of 40. There's just a little wait. We got to wait like 20, 40 minutes or something. After the patch, that's probably going to be like 180 or 220 or something during that same time, because of the people who are online, they're going to be so much more likely to grinding OPR, at least in the short term, meaning the next 2 weeks, 4 weeks, something like that. Someday they'll all have 625 gear score and not really care about Umbral Shards anymore, and more of them will fall off because they just don't like OPR or something. But that is a very serious concern to think about, especially if you still have your server transfer token and you haven't used it yet. You really should be taking all these things into account before moving. Being patient is a virtue here, and it'll be interesting to see what happens after the patch. Will player numbers come up a little bit, or will they just keep on going down over time like they've been doing? Is there ever going to be a bottom? We're going to see in the coming days, weeks, and maybe even months. So I just wanted to give you guys an update. I wanted to make sure you were aware of what you're getting into before you go to one of those high pops. I mean, queue times are one thing, because a lot of people are like, hey, 1 or 2 hour queue, it's worth it to not be on a dead server. And it's like, I want you to know that as I'm finding out, it's actually worse than that. And actually, one more thing I just now remembered. I forgot all about this because I used to do a 100,000 coin speedrun challenge that I never had the time to finish. And when I first started that challenge, it was on a server that was high pop, that had like 1,800 peak. And when I would log on, it was during peak. And what happens during peak hours is performance inside of towns is actually so bad. I don't want any video to show you or anything, but I can explain to you. I don't know if they ever fixed it or not, but the way it used to be was, if you're on a server that's completely full, if you go to Everfall or Windsor, wherever the most populated town is, not only will you be like rubber banding sometimes and stuff, and it'll be unbelievably laggy, some things, like in the past at least, it was the auction house would actually break, and you would go in there and you would try to buy something and it wouldn't even load. And you try to sell something, it would not even list. The only way to list things was to list them all and then sit there in the auction house menu for like an hour, and then it would just suddenly fill eventually. If you walk away, though, it would say you're not close enough to the auction house like 40 minutes later or something. So I don't know if they ever fixed the auction house part of that, but I have heard from people that the performance in the towns is god-awful on those servers. Like, you're going to Windsor, you're going to Everfall, you're rubber banding, you're teleporting. I assume crafting's laggy then. It's a big clown fiesta when it comes to server performance when they actually have 2,000. So some people are like, well, they need to increase server cap to 4,000. Having it at 2,000 really goes to show that whatever they do for servers and whatever this game requires of the servers really cannot handle more than 2,000. It really shouldn't even handle 2,000, honestly, but they need as many people on the server as possible to make the game fun. But anyway, that's the update. I wanted to make sure you guys were aware of what's going on. It's actually somewhat serious depending on how you play the game, what's, enjoyable to you. So definitely take all that into consideration before transferring if you haven't already. If you have, well, just know that now hopefully more people are aware of the situation. Maybe they'll be able to fix it. I'm trying to shed light on this problem. Hopefully it'll get fixed. Hopefully they'll find a way to make OPRs queuable on these high pop servers. Maybe they'll find a way to fix the dungeon queue issue. I don't know. But I definitely just wanted to make sure everyone is aware of it. People who have transferred, people who haven't transferred, know what the situation is. If you do go to one of those high pops, it's totally crazy. The servers can barely keep up with actually having 2,000 people. So that's the situation. Be careful with that. Super long OPR queues on high pop servers. Actual queues for mutators on high pop servers. It's pretty crazy. Hopefully they'll find a fix for it soon in New World.